The day was going along just like any other on the safari, calm, steady, until something completely unexpected changed everything. The weather was perfect, the sun soft over the landscape, and animals were moving about like usual. That is, until George and Mark, two experienced guides, spotted something in the distance that made them freeze. A lion, but not just any lion. There was something different about him. What happened next left everyone completely stunned. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. The lion's behavior was strange. It seemed like he wasn't just wandering, he looked like he was trying to get the guide's attention, almost as if he needed help. George didn't waste a second. He quickly called a local wildlife expert, who, after hearing the details, was just as puzzled. He said he'd never come across anything like it before. When the ultrasound results came in, the expert knew he had to loop in the local authorities. But the big question was, what was really going on with the lion? And what had the ultrasound uncovered? Heading out into the wild to run medical tests on a lion isn't something they usually do, but this one was different. George and Mark were worried enough to push for a proper checkup. In all their years out there, they'd never come across a case like this. When the expert asked for backup, the authorities responded quickly. It soon became clear that the lion didn't just need a quick exam. He might need surgery. Whatever was going on inside his stomach, it looked serious. His life could be in danger. Everyone who saw what happened was shocked. No one, not even the guides or the expert, saw this coming. They were fully focused on getting to the bottom of it. George shared a bit about his connection to the lion, talking about his many years working as a guide in the area. Then, from the surgical area, they suddenly heard the wildlife expert shout, "I can't believe it!" But what exactly had he found inside the lion that made him react like that? Guides like George play a huge role in protecting the animals and the land. But sometimes things happen that they're just not prepared for. Still, that doesn't take away from their commitment or their impact. Without a strong support system, though, the pressure can get intense, especially with expectations coming from all directions. People outside the reserve were starting to notice and step in to help. The stakes were high. Trying to figure out what was going on, George asked himself if it could be heat exhaustion or something from being out in the sun too long. But that didn't make sense. He'd been drinking plenty of water and staying alert. He knew what he saw was real. The sight of the lion troubled him so deeply that he instinctively pulled back at first, unsure how the animal might respond. But seeing it in such a state triggered a strong feeling in George. He had to help. This lion, strong, proud, and incredibly striking, was one George recognized. A quiet conversation with his supervisor confirmed it. They had to act now. Whatever was causing the swelling in the lion's belly, they couldn't wait any longer. Immediate care was the only option. It was obvious something had to be done, fast. George, staying cautious, moved closer to the lion with a team of rangers by his side. No one was sure how the lion would react. He was a proud animal, and they were stepping into his space. Then, without warning, the lion turned his eyes on George. A ripple of nervous tension went through the group. Was he about to charge? The others urged George to back away. They reminded him that a lion feeling trapped might act out in fear, which could lead to sudden, dangerous behavior. That's when the rangers agreed on a different plan. They quickly called the nearest wildlife vet, but just as the call started, it cut out. The ranger who had made it passed along the vet's message. Stay back, keep things calm, and don't make the lion feel threatened. Before any attempt to sedate him, the vet wanted the team to get the area ready for a proper exam. Before we go on, take a quick moment to like this video and help it reach 7,000 likes. And don't forget to subscribe for more updates. With the vet on the way, it was important to secure the space. George decided he would take the lead in calming the lion. He had found him, and he felt responsible for seeing this through. Based on where the swelling had started, right at the top of the stomach, it didn't seem like something that came from inside the lion's body. That made things even more serious. Everyone there was wondering, what on earth could be causing this kind of pain? Whatever it was bad, and it was putting the lion's life at risk. There was no room for mistakes now. But even with everyone doing their best, no one really knew what the next move should be. The officials turned to the vet for advice. Should they stick with the original plan, or try moving the lion somewhere safer? They leaned toward the first option, staying on site. But there was a catch. The vet wasn't sure how to get to their exact spot, and traffic at that time of day was terrible. Still, she knew she had to get there quickly to have any chance of saving the lion. One of the wardens offered to go pick her up, but that would slow things down. Luckily, there were a few people back at headquarters who knew the area well and could help guide her in. So the vet headed to their office instead. Once she arrived, though, the delays became a real problem. The tranquilizer they had used on the lion earlier had worn off. Now, the lion was restless and didn't want to stay still anymore. After all that waiting, he began to try and move. The wardens were unsure what to do next. A few of them started to think about giving up altogether, saying maybe it wasn't worth all this for an animal that had probably eaten something bad. The group was split, but most of them stayed focused, listening to the vet's advice and trusting her judgment. They knew that if they let the lion go now, he wouldn't make it. That wasn't something they were willing to risk. Even as the lion moved slowly and unsteadily, the wardens used their vehicles to block him from slipping back into the wild. They were out of tranquilizers and couldn't safely sedate him again. But the vet still had a dose, and they just needed to buy a little more time until she got there. As the veterinarian arrived, the lion remained in the same spot where the team had first managed to keep him contained. Still, the situation was clearly growing more intense. The lion was becoming agitated and more confrontational. The security team hesitated to move their vehicles, which were still parked in a loose circle around the lion. Tension grew as the lion began staring directly at those sitting inside the nearby cars. The warden's anxiety shot up, and several of them slowly backed their vehicles away, hoping to put some distance between themselves and the increasingly irritated animal. The vet knew she had to act fast. At this point, sedation was the only real option, even though it carried its own risks. One major concern was whether the lion, already so stressed, would wake up safely. But the way he was growling and pacing showed the vet that his survival instinct was still strong. And that gave her confidence. Moving carefully, she stepped forward and administered the tranquilizer. Once it took effect, the lion slumped out of sight. The entire team, drained from the high-stress situation, was visibly relieved. Some even dropped to the ground, breathing deeply, while others said their hearts were finally slowing back to normal. They'd come dangerously close to several worst-case scenarios. Knowing they'd gotten through it safely filled them with quiet gratitude. Now the vet turned her full attention to the lion's swelling, the main reason she had come. She grabbed her medical kit from the large vehicle parked nearby and began preparing for the next steps. She decided that another ultrasound was needed and immediately contacted the appropriate authorities to assist. When the results came in, the presence of police in the area hinted that this wasn't just a typical medical case. George, confused but cooperative, found himself being questioned. Why him? A physical exam confirmed the vet's suspicion. Something was stuck at the entrance to the lion's stomach, something the animal couldn't digest. With no other way to help, she knew she had to go in and remove it through surgery. It was risky, especially out here in the open, but sometimes there's simply no other choice. With steady hands, the vet made an incision, working carefully through the skin, muscle, and tissues. Finally, she reached the source of the problem. The procedure was done with extreme care, and though everyone watching was on edge, the vet remained calm. What she pulled out was a lump of undigested food, but inside it was something that left the whole group stunned. Tucked within the food was a shiny object the vet didn't immediately recognize, which is why George contacted the local authorities again. He had a suspicion. He pointed to the small microchip hidden inside the food. Then he told the officers about a strange incident he'd been involved in not long ago. George had run into some suspicious individuals, likely poachers, and had taken a strange gadget from them. He went to his vehicle and returned with the device. One of the officers recognized it instantly. Someone else had been caught recently with an identical tool. The gadget was used to track animals fitted with hidden microchips, allowing hunters to follow them unnoticed, even in protected areas. It all started to make sense. The lion had eaten food that couldn't be digested, food planted by poachers, causing the blockage. Once the chip was removed, the vet carefully stitched up the lion's wound, making sure there were no further problems. Thankfully, the lion seemed strong and healthy otherwise and was expected to bounce back quickly. Within a short time, the lion began to wake up. At first, he looked dazed and unsure of what had happened, but then, slowly, he stood up, moving with more ease than before. As he wandered off into the wild, the vet had one final task. He turned to the team of conservationists and sincerely thanked them for their hard work and courage. The police, meanwhile, stayed focused on catching those responsible, and in the end, the poachers were tracked down and brought to justice. What did you think of today's story? And what's your opinion on poachers and how they affect wildlife? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, share it with others, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another incredible story. Until next time.